Hi, 6th graders. We're on lesson 5-2, which is adding and subtracting fractions. So make sure you label the top of your notebook with the lesson number and the title of our concept. Our learning target is being able to add and subtract like and unlike fractions. So a couple important vocabulary words that you want to watch for and write down the definitions as we come to it would be like fractions and unlike fractions. We want like fractions first. So like fractions are fractions that have the same denominator. So some examples of like fractions would be 3/10 and 9/10. Remember, our top number is our numerator, bottom number is our denominator. So like fractions, denominators are the same. Another example would be 2/3 and 1/3. So if we want to add or subtract like fractions, we add or subtract the numerators, keep the denominators, and then we simplify. So if I want to add 3/10 plus 9/10, I add the numerators, so 3 plus 9 is 12. And then I keep the denominator, so it's 10. So we have 12/10. And then when we have an improper fraction, the simplest form is always the mixed number form. So we want to convert 12/10 to a mixed number. I know that 10 goes into 12 one time. 10 times 10 is 1. 10 times 1 is 10, and then I have 2 left over. So I have 1 and 2/10, because 12 minus 10 then is 2. So 1 and 2/10, and then I know I can divide my numerator and my denominator both by 2, so I end up with 1 and 1/5. 2/3 and 1/3, if I want to subtract, so subtract the numerators and then keep the denominators. So I would do 2 minus 1 to get 1, keep my denominator, which is 3, simplify, and 1/3 is already in simplest form, so then I leave it. Unlike fractions have different denominators. So you wanted to make sure that you wrote down what like fractions are and unlike fractions. And you probably want to have an example of like fractions and then an example of unlike fractions. So unlike fractions would be 1/2 and 2/3, because our denominators are different, or 3/10 and 4/11. So our denominators are different. Another example could be 2/5 and 2/9. So we have different denominators, but in this case we have the same numerator. These are still unlike fractions because denominators are different. So to add or subtract unlike fractions, first we have to find a common denominator. Then we add or subtract the numerators. Then we keep the denominator, and then we simplify. So we just have that extra step of finding a common denominator. So we're going to do 1/2 and 2/3, but I am going to move this to a new page so we have more room. So 1/2 plus 2/3. So I know that 2 and 3 can both go into 6. So I'm going to multiply this. I'm going to multiply 1/2 by 3. Remember, I have to do it to the numerator and the denominator. And then here I'm going to multiply both my numerator and my denominator by 2, because 2 times 3 equals 6, and then 3 times 2 equals 6. So I'm going to rewrite it so I stay nice and organized. If I try to do it in my head, sometimes I could make a mistake. So it's really worth that extra second to go ahead and rewrite it. So then I have 3, 6 plus 4, 6. Notice that I multiplied both my numerator and denominator by 3 here, but then I did it by 2 here because that's what I needed to do to my denominator to get to 6. And now I add 3 plus 4 is 7. Keep my denominator, 7, 6. 6 goes into 7 one time. 7 minus 6 is 1. And then keep my denominator, 1 and 1/6. If I have, let's just do 1/2 and 3/4. And we'll add them together again. 1/2 and 3/4. I know that 2 can go into 4, so for this example, I only need to change this fraction. And I can multiply both my numerator and my denominator to get it into fourths. So now I have 2/4 plus 3/4 which then equals 5/4, which is 1 and 1/4. So notice that sometimes you might only need to change one fraction if one of the denominators can go into the other denominator. If I have 2/3 minus 1/4, this time I know that 3 and 4 both go into 12. So 3 times 4 is 12. So I do the same to that numerator. 4 times 3 is 12. So then I multiply my numerator by 3. If I can't think of a number that they both can go into, I can always multiply it by the opposite, because we always know that they have a common multiple of whatever the two denominators are multiplied together. It might not always be the least common multiple, but you can always multiply them together and then simplify after. So now I'm going to rewrite to keep myself organized. 8/12 minus 3/12. 8 minus 3 is 5. I keep my denominator. 5/12. I ask myself if it's in simplest form, which it is, so then I stay with 5/12. All right, in your notebook, I would like you to pause me and solve these 4 problems, and then come back and unpause me and check your answers. So we have common 11 plus 13 is 24 15ths. 15 goes into 24 one time. 24 minus 15 is 9. So we have 1 and 9/15, which is not in simplest form because 9 and 15 can both be divided by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5, so I have 1 and 3/5. 56 minus 23, I don't have to change my numerators again. I already know that I'm going to have 90 on the bottom. 56 minus 23 is 33 90ths, which is in simplest form, so I'm going to leave it as 33 90ths. 1/2 plus 1/4, which I already showed you in the other example, so hopefully it wasn't too tricky for you to do. Change it to fourths, so 1/2 plus, or 1 times 2, 2 times 2 is 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. And then 7/8 minus 5/6. 8 and 6 can both go into 24, so I'm going to multiply this fraction, 7/8 by 3. I'm going to multiply 5/6 by 4. So then I'll get 24ths for my denominator. So I have 21 24ths minus 20 24ths. 21 minus 20 is 1, and I keep my denominator, which is 24, so I end up with 1 24ths. You can go back and rewatch anything that you would like on this video. Just remember that you can't add or subtract until you have a common denominator. And then make sure you log into Naiku and take your 5-2 adding and subtracting fractions Naiku quiz. Have a great night.